I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here we are. My name is Sarah, and 3 years ago, I was trapped in what I now realize was the most unfair living situation of my life. It all started when my husband Jake and I moved into his father's sprawling suburban home in Denver, Colorado, right after our wedding in 2021. The house was beautiful, a classic American colonial with white picket fences, manicured lawns, and that picture-perfect neighborhood feel you see in movies. Robert's house sat on a corner lot in Highlands Ranch, one of those upscale neighborhoods where every lawn looked like it belonged in a magazine. The exterior was pristine white with forest green shutters, a wraparound porch with rocking chairs, and mature oak trees that had probably been there for decades. Inside, hardwood floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and family photos lined the walls, showing 3 generations of what looked like the perfect American family. Jake's father, Robert, seemed welcoming enough at first. He was a stocky man, in his late 50s, with graying hair always perfectly combed and hands roughened from years of running his construction company. "Family helps family," he'd say, with his trademark stern smile, the kind that never quite reached his eyes. He had this way of speaking that made everything sound like a business transaction, even when talking about family matters. But what he didn't mention during those first warm conversations was that his version of help came with very different terms depending on which child you were married to. From day one, Robert made it clear that Jake and I would pay $200 monthly rent for the basement apartment. The space itself wasn't terrible. About 800 square feet with a separate entrance, a small kitchenette, and a bathroom that had clearly been renovated recently. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow, and there were 2 decent-sized windows that let in morning light. It wasn't unreasonable rent, considering Denver's housing market was absolutely insane at the time, with average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment running close to $2,500. But what stung, what kept me awake at night grinding my teeth, was discovering that Jake's sister Michelle and her unemployed boyfriend Derek had been living in the main floor guest wing for over 2 years, completely rent-free. The guest wing was easily twice the size of our basement space, with panoramic windows overlooking the backyard, access to the main kitchen, and a bathroom with a jacuzzi tub that I could hear running at all hours. When I asked Jake about this, obvious double standard during our 3rd week there, he just shrugged in that defeated way that would become all too familiar. That's just how Dad is with Michelle. She's always been his favorite since Mom died. I stopped questioning it years ago. The resignation in his voice broke my heart, but also lit a fire in me. How could a father treat his own children so differently? The basement wasn't terrible, but it felt like we were living in someone else's shadow. Every morning at exactly 7:15 a.m., I'd hear Michelle's footsteps above us as she made her leisurely way to the kitchen in fuzzy slippers, her laughter echoing through the vents as she enjoyed her free breakfast using ingredients we weren't allowed to touch. She'd blast music while cooking, the bass thumping through our ceiling, and when we asked her to keep it down during my work-from-home calls, she'd roll her eyes and say, "This is my family's house." The kitchen situation was particularly infuriating. Robert had established peak hours from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. when basement dwellers, meaning us, weren't supposed to use the main kitchen because it was Michelle's cooking time. Never mind that we were paying rent and she wasn't. We were relegated to our tiny kitchenette with its half-sized refrigerator and 2-burner stove, while she sprawled across granite countertops and used the double oven like she was hosting Thanksgiving. Dinner every night. The inequality was suffocating, but Jake insisted we should be grateful for any help at all. "At least we're saving money," he'd say when I complained about taking cold showers because Michelle had used all the hot water again. "And Dad's letting us stay here while we figure things out." But I wasn't the type of person to just figure things out. I was the type to make things happen. Little did Robert know, I had been quietly saving every penny from my marketing job at a tech startup downtown, documenting every unfair treatment in a notebook I kept hidden in my desk drawer, and planning something that would change our lives forever. Every slight, every eye roll from Michelle, Every condescending comment from Robert was fuel for the fire burning inside me. I was going to show them all exactly what this marketing girl was capable of. Want to know what happened next? Don't forget to let me know in the comments where you're watching this video from, and if you're enjoying this story so far, hit that like button. The breaking point came on a cold February morning in 2022, one of those typical Denver winter days where the temperature drops below freezing overnight and the pipes in older houses start acting up. I was rushing to get ready for an important client presentation when I turned the shower handle and was greeted with nothing but ice-cold water, again. This was the fourth time that month, and I was beyond frustrated. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was paying $200 a month to live like a college student, while Michelle enjoyed every luxury of the house above us. I threw on a robe and marched upstairs to find Robert, determined to have a conversation about the increasingly frequent plumbing issues. What I found instead made my blood pressure spike to dangerous levels. There was Michelle, luxuriously soaking in the main bathroom's oversized jacuzzi tub, surrounded by flickering candles and what looked like a full spa setup. Essential oils filled the air, and she had one of those fancy face masks on while sipping what appeared to be mimosa. Steam rose around her like she was in some five-star resort in Aspen, completely oblivious to the fact that her excessive hot water usage had left the rest of the house without any. "Oh, Sarah," she said, without even looking up from her magazine, her voice dripping with the kind of casual dismissiveness that made me want to scream. "I think there might be an issue with the water heater or something. You should probably tell Dad about it when he gets back from his morning run." She took another sip of her drink and flipped a page, as if my freezing shower experience was nothing more than a minor inconvenience in her perfect morning routine. I stood there for a moment, taking in the scene. Here was this 26-year-old woman who hadn't held a steady job in 3 years, soaking in luxury while I, a marketing professional pulling in $75,000 a year, was expected to shower with ice water and be grateful for the privilege. The entitlement was breathtaking, but what made it worse was how normalized it had become in this house. "Michelle," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "this is the fourth time this month that there's been no hot water when Jake and I need to get ready for work. Maybe we could coordinate bath times or something?" She finally looked up at me, her eyes rolling so hard I thought they might fall out of her head. "Sarah, I don't really keep track of other people's schedules. This is when I like to take my baths, and I've been doing it this way for 2 years. Maybe you could shower at night instead." The suggestion that I should completely rearrange my morning routine to accommodate her spa sessions was the last straw. I left the bathroom without another word, but something had crystallized in that moment. This wasn't just about hot water. It was about respect, fairness, and the fact that I was essentially subsidizing Michelle's lifestyle while being treated like an unwelcome guest. That evening, when Robert came home from his construction company still wearing his work boots and looking tired, I approached him diplomatically. I had prepared talking points, thinking that surely a reasonable conversation between adults could resolve this situation. "Robert, I was wondering if we could discuss the hot water situation and maybe some of the house rules in general. I think there might be ways to make things work better for everyone." His response was swift and cutting, delivered without even looking up from the mail he was sorting through. "Sarah, you're lucky to have a roof over your head at these prices. Denver's rental market is brutal right now, and I'm giving you a deal that most people would kill for. If you don't like the arrangements here, you're welcome to find somewhere else and pay market rates." His tone was final, dismissive, the way you'd speak to a tenant you barely tolerated rather than your son's wife. Jake, who had been quietly eating dinner at the kitchen island, didn't say a word in my defense. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Robert added, "Besides, Michelle helps out around here. She handles grocery shopping, keeps the common areas clean, and she's been through a lot since her divorce. Family takes care of family, but that doesn't mean everyone gets the same treatment." But here's what Robert didn't know about me. I've always been a planner, and I'd been planning for this exact moment. For 18 months, Ever since our second week in that basement, I had been putting away $3,000 every month from my salary, living entirely off Jake's income from his job at an engineering firm. Every time Michelle got something for free that we had to pay for, every condescending comment from Robert, every cold shower, it all went into my motivation fund. I'd also been researching Denver's real estate market obsessively, spending my lunch breaks looking at listings, studying neighborhood trends, and learning everything I could about the home buying process. I knew the average price per square foot in every suburb, which areas were up and coming, and exactly what kind of house our budget could buy. I had spreadsheets tracking property values, mortgage rates, and even seasonal buying patterns. Next morning, I made a decision that would shock everyone in that house and change the trajectory of our lives forever. I waited until Jake left for work and Robert headed to his construction site before making the call that would change everything. My real estate agent, Jennifer Martinez, had been someone I'd been quietly consulting for months, sending her listings I found interesting and asking hypothetical questions about the buying process. She thought I was just dreaming, planning for some distant future purchase. She had no idea I was sitting on enough cash to buy a house outright. "Jennifer, it's Sarah," I said, my hands trembling slightly with excitement and nervous energy. "I'm ready to move forward. Today. I want to see houses today, and I'm prepared to make an offer with cash." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before she responded, "Sarah, honey, are you sure you're ready? We've talked about this being a future goal, and the market is really competitive right now. Most buyers need months to get pre-approved and find the right property." "I have $430,000 in cash, Jennifer. I'm ready to buy today." Another pause, longer this time, before she cleared her throat and said, "I'll pick you up in 2 hours. We're going house hunting." The first house we looked at was a disaster. A 1970s ranch that smelled like cigarettes and had orange shag carpeting throughout. The second was better but overpriced for what it offered. But the third house, the moment we pulled into the driveway, I knew we had found it. It was a stunning craftsman-style home built in 1925, completely renovated while maintaining all its original character. The exterior featured natural stone and cedar shingle siding, with a covered front porch supported by thick, tapered columns that screamed quality craftsmanship. Inside, the house was everything Robert's wasn't: warm, welcoming, and filled with character. The original hardwood floors had been refinished to a golden honey color that made the entire space glow. The living room featured a working stone fireplace with a beautiful mantel, built-in bookcases that any literature lover would envy, and windows that looked out onto mature trees and a neighborhood where people actually seemed to know each other. The kitchen was a masterpiece of modern functionality wrapped in period-appropriate styling. Subway tile backsplash, butcher block countertops, and vintage-inspired fixtures created a space that felt both timeless and contemporary. There was an island large enough for 2 people to cook comfortably, something I had dreamed about during all those months of being exiled to our tiny kitchenette during peak hours. But what really sold me was the master bedroom suite. It was spacious without being ostentatious, with beautiful crown molding, a walk-in closet that was bigger than our entire bathroom at Robert's house, and an ensuite bathroom featuring a clawfoot tub and separate glass shower. As I stood there imagining lazy Sunday mornings without worrying about someone else's bath schedule, I knew this was it. "I want to make an offer," I told Jennifer, before we had even finished the tour. "Full asking price, cash, no contingencies, and I can close in 2 weeks." The listing agent, who had been showing houses all morning to buyers with complicated financing situations, actually did a double take. "Are you serious? Cash offer?" When Jennifer confirmed my financial position, the energy in the room shifted completely. We had their attention. By 4 p.m. that same day, my offer had been accepted. By 5 p.m., I was on the phone with a real estate attorney, arranging the closing. By the time Jake came home from work, I was sitting at our tiny kitchenette table with a stack of paperwork, and the biggest smile I'd had in months. "Jake," I said, barely able to contain my excitement. "Sit down. We need to talk." He looked worried at first. In his family, serious conversations usually meant bad news. "I bought us a house today. I put an offer on a beautiful craftsman. Home about 15 minutes from here, and it was accepted. We close in 2 weeks, and I'm paying cash." The look on his face was priceless. His jaw actually dropped as he processed what I had just said. "You... what?" "Sarah, what are you talking about? We don't have money for a house. We've been saving, but not nearly enough for a down payment, and our credit situation isn't great after that medical debt from last year." I pulled out my laptop and showed him my secret savings account, the one I had been building for 18 months while living off his income entirely. $54,000 in cash, Jake, plus another $20,000 in my emergency fund that I'm not touching. I've been saving $3,000 every month from my salary, living off your income, and planning for exactly this moment. The closing process moved faster than anyone expected. In Colorado, cash purchases can close remarkably quickly when all parties are motivated, and everyone was motivated. The sellers wanted a quick, clean transaction. The real estate agents wanted their commissions. And I wanted to get out of Robert's house before I did something that might damage family relationships permanently. Within 3 weeks, I held the keys to our new home, a beautiful 2,400 square foot house with everything we had been dreaming of. Hardwood floors that didn't creak when you walked on them, a kitchen where we could cook whenever we wanted, a backyard perfect for the dogs. We planned to adopt, and most importantly, complete financial freedom. No mortgage, no monthly payments except utilities and property taxes, and no landlord who could treat us like second-class citizens. But the best part was still coming. I had planned exactly how to break the news to Robert, and it was going to be unforgettable. I decided to savor the moment and give Robert exactly 30 days' notice, just like any professional landlord would expect from a tenant. During those weeks leading up to my big reveal, I watched the household dynamics with new eyes, documenting every instance of unfair treatment like an anthropologist studying a particularly dysfunctional tribe. Michelle continued her princess routine, commandeering the kitchen during peak hours to make elaborate meals that she'd photograph for her Instagram before leaving half of them uneaten. She'd blast music while cooking, leave dishes in the sink for days, and use the washing machine at all hours because, as she put it, "I have a lot of delicate items that need special care." Meanwhile, Jake and I were still relegated to doing laundry after 10 p.m. and before 6 a.m. to avoid interfering with her schedule. The hot water situation never improved. In fact, it got worse because Derek, Michelle's boyfriend, had started taking hour-long showers every morning while playing music on a Bluetooth speaker. This guy hadn't had a steady job the entire time I'd known him, spent most days playing video games in Michelle's room, and somehow felt entitled to use more resources than the people actually paying rent. Robert seemed completely oblivious to the growing tension, or maybe he just didn't care. He'd come home from work, grab a beer from the refrigerator that Jake and I had stocked, and settle into his recliner to watch TV at volumes that made it impossible for us to have conversations. In our basement apartment, when we asked him to turn it down during my evening work calls, he'd respond with, "This is my house, and I'll watch TV at whatever volume I want." On March 15th, exactly 30 days before our move-out date, I walked upstairs with an envelope containing our official notice to vacate. I had dressed professionally that day, a crisp white blouse, tailored navy pants, and the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're about to change the power dynamic in a room forever. I found Robert in his home office, a cluttered space filled with construction blueprints, coffee-stained contracts, and photos of projects his company had completed over the years. "Robert," I said, knocking on his open door frame, "do you have a few minutes? I have something important to discuss with you." He looked up from the invoices he was reviewing, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose, and gestured for me to sit in the worn leather chair across from his desk. "Jake and I will be moving out at the end of April," I announced, placing the first envelope on his desk with practiced calm. "Here's our 30-day notice, as required by our rental agreement." I watched his face carefully as he opened the envelope and scanned the formal letter. I had typed on professional letterhead. His reaction was exactly what I had expected, that familiar condescending expression spreading across his features like he was about to deliver a lecture to a child who had made a poor decision. "Well, Sarah," he said, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed, "I hope you two have found something within your budget. The real world is expensive, and rent prices have only gotten worse since you've been here. You might find that $200 was actually a pretty good deal." The smugness in his voice was about to be completely shattered. I placed a second envelope on his desk, this one thicker, containing copies of our new house deed, the cash purchase, receipt, photos of our new home, and a detailed breakdown of the transaction. "Actually, Robert," I said, my voice steady and professional, "we've purchased a house. We paid for it entirely in cash. No mortgage, no financing, no help from family. Just our own savings." I'll never forget the look on his face as he opened that envelope. His confident smirk faltered first, then disappeared entirely as he pulled out the deed, showing my name as the sole owner of a property worth $425,000. His hands actually shook as he read through the purchase documents, his eyes widening when he saw the final sale price and the notation that it was a cash transaction. This can't be real," he stammered, looking back and forth between the documents and my face as if he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't make sense. "How could you possibly afford this? You're just a marketing coordinator at some startup. These numbers don't add up." The condescension was still there in his voice, but now it was mixed with genuine confusion and what looked suspiciously like embarrassment. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery I had prepared for exactly this moment. Dozens of pictures from our final walkthrough and home inspection. Room after room of pristine hardwood floors, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and spacious bedrooms that made his house look outdated by comparison. The kitchen island alone was bigger than our entire basement kitchenette. "I've been saving every penny of my salary for 18 months, Robert," I explained, watching as his face grew redder with each photo he saw. "Every unfair moment in this house, every cold shower, every time I watched Michelle enjoy privileges that were denied to us, it all motivated me to work harder, save smarter, and plan for this exact moment. While you were treating us like charity cases, I was building enough wealth to buy a house that's probably worth more than this one." Jake appeared in the doorway just as I was finishing my explanation, having heard voices and come upstairs to see what was happening. For once in his life, he found his voice and stood up to his father instead of making excuses for the family's dysfunction. "Dad, what Sarah did is incredible, but what you did to us was wrong. I'm your son, and you treated us like we were strangers, paying to sleep in your basement while Michelle got everything handed to her for free." The best part, though, was still coming. Michelle had been eavesdropping from the hallway, and she chose that moment to make her entrance. Michelle burst into the office like she owned the place, which, in her mind, she probably did. "What's all this shouting about?" she demanded, her blonde hair in a messy bun and wearing one of those expensive athleisure outfits that cost more than most people's rent. Derek skulked behind her, as usual, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else but in a room where adults were having a serious conversation. "Wait, you guys actually bought a house?" Michelle asked, her voice rising with disbelief as she spotted the documents spread across Robert's desk. "Like, actually bought it? Not renting?" When I handed her my phone to scroll through the photos, her jaw literally dropped. The same woman who had been treating us like inconvenient house guests for 18 months was now staring at images of our beautiful new kitchen, complete with an island bigger than her entire bedroom and appliances that made Robert's outdated set look like they belonged in a museum. "Oh my God," she whispered, swiping through photo after photo. "This kitchen is gorgeous. And is that a walk-in pantry? Derek, look at this bathroom. It has heated floors." Her tone had completely changed from condescending to envious, and I was savoring every second of it. But I wasn't done yet. I had saved the best revelation for last. From my purse, I pulled out a manila folder containing something I had been working on for weeks. A comprehensive financial analysis that would make Robert's favoritism impossible to deny or dismiss. I thought you might be interested in these. Calculations, Robert, I said, placing the folder on his desk with quiet confidence. Inside was a detailed spreadsheet I had prepared showing that over our 18-month stay, Jake and I had paid Robert $21,600 in rent. Meanwhile, Michelle and Derek had received an estimated $32,400 in free housing value, based on comparable rental prices for their larger space, plus unlimited utilities, groceries, and household amenities that we had been restricted from using. You charged your own son rent while giving your daughter everything for free, I continued, my voice steady but firm. The financial disparity in how you treated your own children is documented right here, down to the penny. Jake paid you $200 every month, while Michelle contributed $0 to household expenses, utilities, or even groceries that she consumed. The spreadsheet was color-coded and included everything: utilities usage based on square footage and occupancy, grocery expenses that we had covered for the whole house, cleaning supplies we had purchased, and even the cost of repairs that Jake had done around the house without any rent reduction. The numbers painted a clear picture of systematic favoritism that couldn't be explained away. Robert's face had progressed through several shades of red and was now approaching purple. "Now wait just a minute," he blustered, but I wasn't finished. I had one more surprise that would drive the point home completely. "There's something else you should know," I said, pulling out another document. "I've been keeping detailed records of every instance of discriminatory treatment. Every time we were denied access to common areas that we were paying to use, every utility disruption caused by Michelle's excessive usage. I originally started documenting everything in case we needed to involve a tenant's rights attorney, but now it's just a fascinating case study in family dysfunction." Michelle's reaction was the most telling. Instead of shame or embarrassment at being exposed, she became defensive and entitled. "I help Dad with things around the house," she protested weakly, her voice taking on that whiny quality it got when she didn't get her way. "I do the grocery shopping sometimes, and I keep the common areas clean." I almost laughed out loud. "Michelle, I have receipts showing that Jake and I bought groceries for the entire household at least twice a month, spending an average of $400 each time. We maintained the yard every weekend, cleaned the common areas that we were allowed to use, shoveled snow from the driveway all winter, and never once complained when your music kept us awake or when Derek's gaming sessions went until 3 a.m. with the volume blasting." Derek, who had been trying to make himself invisible in the corner, finally spoke up. "Maybe we should all just calm down," he mumbled, but nobody paid attention to him. The man who had been freeloading for 2 years while Jake and I subsidized. His lifestyle didn't get a vote in this conversation. Jake, who had been watching this whole exchange with growing amazement, finally found his voice. "Dad, I can't believe I'm just now seeing how messed up this whole situation has been. Sarah saved enough money to buy us a house while living under conditions that would have made me miserable, and she did it without complaining once to me about how unfair you were being." But the real revelation was still coming. I had one final surprise that would show them exactly who they had been underestimating all this time. "There's one more thing," I said, reaching into my bag for the final folder. The one I had been most excited to share. "I didn't just buy us a house with cash. I also got promoted last month to senior marketing director with a $40,000 salary increase. And I've been offered a position with a competitor that would mean another $25,000 raise." The room fell completely silent as I let that information sink in. Robert's construction company had been struggling lately. I knew this because I had overheard him on phone calls with clients, discussing delayed projects and cash flow problems. The idea that his marketing girl daughter-in-law was making more money than he was clearly hadn't occurred to him. But the math was becoming undeniably clear. "You mean you're making over $100,000 a year?" Michelle asked, her voice barely above a whisper. For someone who had spent months acting like she was better than us, this revelation was clearly rocking her world. Derek looked like he might pass out. The reality that he'd been mooching off a family where the person he'd been most dismissive of was the highest earner was probably giving him an existential crisis. $115,000 as of this month, I confirmed. With performance bonuses and stock options that could add another $30,000 annually. The startup I work for just secured Series B funding, and my department has been integral to their growth. I had never talked about my career success in this house because Robert and Michelle had made it clear they weren't interested in hearing about my work. But now, their undivided attention was almost comical. Jake squeezed my hand, his pride in his wife finally showing after months of letting his family make me feel small. Sarah's been featured in Marketing Week magazine twice this year, he added. She's spoken at 3 industry conferences, and her campaigns have generated over $2 million in revenue for her company. I've been married to the most successful person in this family, and you've all been treating her like she should be grateful for scraps. The final nail in the coffin came when I pulled out the last document, an offer letter from a Fortune 500 company in downtown Denver. I was also headhunted by a major corporation, I announced. They offered me a director of digital marketing position with a starting salary of $140,000, full benefits, stock options, and a signing bonus. I turned it down because I'm happy where I am, but it's nice to know my market value. Robert looked like he had been hit by a truck. This man, who had spent 18 months treating me like a charity case, was now faced with the reality that I was probably the most financially successful person in his family, and I had achieved it all while living under his roof and dealing with his favoritism. I want you all to understand something, I said, standing up and gathering my documents. Every slight, every unfair rule, every time you made me feel unwelcome in this house, it motivated me to work harder, save more, and plan better. You tried to make me feel small, but instead, you gave me the drive to become bigger than any of you imagined. Michelle was crying now, not from sadness, but from the humiliation of realizing she had been looking down on someone who was so far above her station that it wasn't even close. "Sarah, I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought you were just Jake's wife with some little marketing job. I didn't realize." "You didn't realize because you never bothered to ask," I replied calmly. "You assumed that because I was willing. To live peacefully in your father's basement and follow his arbitrary rules, I must be desperate or unsuccessful. You never considered that I was just being respectful while working towards something bigger." Robert finally found his voice, but it was too late for apologies. "Sarah, if I had known about your success, things would have been different. You have. To understand, I thought I was helping you kids get on your feet." "No, Robert," I said firmly. "If you had known about my success, you might have treated me differently, but that would have been for the wrong reasons. You should have treated me with basic respect because I'm your son's wife, because I was paying rent, and because it was the right thing to do, not because of my bank account." 3 weeks later, Jake and I moved into our beautiful new home. We hosted a housewarming party that Michelle and Derek weren't invited to, though Robert did come, bearing an expensive bottle of wine and a very different attitude. He spent the evening asking about my work, complimenting our house, and treating me with the respect he should have shown from day one. The real victory wasn't the house, though it's absolutely perfect for us. The real victory was proving that you should never underestimate someone based on their willingness to be kind, patient, or accommodating. Sometimes the person you're treating poorly is actually the most successful person in the room. They're just too classy to rub your face in it until you force their hand. Oh, and Michelle? She moved back in with her mother 6 months later when Robert started charging her rent too. Apparently, my success had opened his eyes to the unfairness of his previous arrangements. Derek found himself a job at a grocery store and his own apartment. Funny how quickly people can become self-sufficient when their free ride ends. If you enjoyed this story of justice and personal triumph, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Sometimes the best revenge, really, is living well. And buying a house with cash doesn't hurt either.